Yasoda Nandana Bhaja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Naram Chaiva Narotama Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayam
Srinvatam Svakata Krishna
Srinvatam Swakata Krishna
Punya Sravana Kirtana
Puja Sravana Kirtana
Idyantasto Hi Abhadrani Idinoti Suhirt Satam Nasta Praeshu Abhidreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. Just going to read the translations for the last verse. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Do we need the translation?
So it's up to you. Who's going to translate? You? They're already doing it. You see? They're doing it simultaneously.
Oh, okay.
हरे कृष्ण जिन भक्तों को हिंदी में प्रवचन का आनंद कला रहे हैं मैं श्री भगवान के भक्तों के सामने दो जगह को हिंदी में इसका अनुवाद करेंगे तो बाकी जिनको अंग्रेजी समझ में आ रहा है तो यहाँ बैठ सकते हैं और
Not simultaneously. It's simultaneous at the same time. You don't have to wait. We can speak slowly.
So today we're going to talk about the person Bhagavatam.
Yes.
There's two kinds of Bhagavatam, the book Bhagavatam and the person Bhagavatam. And the person Bhagavatam is exemplified by our Guru, Srila Prabhupada, who has so mercifully descended to this planet to bring us back to home, back to Godhead. The whole world, he's so powerful, he can bring the whole world back to Godhead. So we should try and understand the greatness of Srila Prabhupada, because even at the time of Lord Chaitanya, Nityananda Prabhu, who was the expansion of Godhead himself, was deputized to preach in West Bengal and deliver the mercy of Godhead to everyone in West Bengal, in India. And Srila Prabhupada, the servant of Lord Chaitanya and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, is delivering the whole world to Krishna consciousness. He's making it available. Like Srila Prabhupada used to say, please take advantage of this great opportunity. So everyone has free will. We can choose to follow Srila Prabhupada, to follow the Mahajans or not. That's our free will. We can choose to remain in this material world, suffering birth, death, disease, and old age, or we can choose to follow the path of Srila Prabhupada and go back to home, back to Godhead, and reestablish our eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. So, devotees always like to hear how someone came to Krishna consciousness, how they received the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And for everyone, the story may be slightly different. But the results are all the same. Once we enter into that relationship with Srila Prabhupada, who is the Siksha Guru for all of ISKCON, and as Srila Prabhupada explains in Nectar of Devotion, there's no difference between the Siksha Guru and the initiating Guru. So anyone who takes shelter of ISKCON and Srila Prabhupada's Vani, his Vapu his body is not here, but his Vani is still here. And his Vani is even more powerful than his person. Like Srila Prabhupada used to tell his personal servants to go out and preach, because preaching is more important than caring for his body. So this is the most important thing, to come in contact with the Vani of Srila Prabhupada. And everyone has that opportunity. So one might think, oh, this is such a big organization, which has grown so rapidly now in India over the last 20 years. What difference can I make? But think of the position of Arjuna. He was fighting against the great Kaurava army of the Kurus, headed by Bhisma Dev, who could not be defeated. So he was thinking, what can I do? But that answer is given by Srila Prabhupada, because Prabhupada taught us that nothing is impossible for Krishna. So never think small, think big, because Krishna is the biggest. He's the universal form. He encompasses all the universes. So you can make a difference by surrendering to Srila Prabhupada and to getting his mercy, and he will empower you to do great things. This is the lesson that everyone must carry. Don't think that you are that you are limited, because Krishna is unlimited. And we used to use the term, or Prabhupada used the term, that the spiritual master is the transparent via media to Krishna. He doesn't accept any service for himself, but he accepts it on behalf of Krishna and gives the disciple the credit. So he is transferring all of our service directly to Krishna, because he's a pure devotee. So when I was studying in New York University in 1960s, in one of my courses, I chose to read Bhagavad Gita, which was an optional one of the books that we could choose to read. And I was very impressed with the Bhagavad Gita. But this book was just a translation. It didn't have a commentary. So I was thinking to myself, this philosophy is so perfect. How can one actually live according to this philosophy? So then Krishna arranged for me to meet my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. And I went to Montreal, where Prabhupada was staying, because he was waiting. He had just gone back to India for his health and had come back to the American continent, but he was staying in Montreal because of some visa technicality. So I was initiated in Montreal. And when I met Srila Prabhupada, you know, he asked me about my studies, and he told me to continue I had maybe like 1.5 years of school to complete to get my degree. And he told me to complete it, but to use it for Krishna. This is how we make our lives transcendental, spiritual. Even though we're in the material world, simultaneously we're in the spiritual world because we're performing spiritual activities under the guidance of a pure devotee. So that makes it spiritual, not material. So I'll let Prabhu speak a little bit, and then I'll continue.
All right. So Srila Prabhupada was especially mentioned independent, creative thinkers. Dependent on Krishna, but if we come up with the idea of how we can help this movement expand and spread in a nicer way, wonderful. Look at Radheshyam Das Brahmachari from Pune. Amazing what he did to get the ISKCON Youth Forum expanded and established in a revolutionary way. We need leaders, not just followers, thinkers, correct? So I was also, as BALIMARDAN, I was in college, but due to the inferior association of the friends, professors, etc., like Gandhi, I said, what is the use of this degree? So in my final year of college, I said, if I graduated, I was an honors student, but even if I got like a degree in arts, I could be a teacher, have a small, get a regular. I said, why? Why not just sell, trade, buy wholesale, sell retail, or buy from the manufacturer, things like that, if I needed money. But somehow Krishna has blessed me. I've never had to worry about Lakshmi, being born in a good family, blah, 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 having a little ski boat. And when I was just a young boy, 17 years of age, I broke my leg in a snow skiing accident and had a big plaster all the way up to my waist. So during that 1 year while the plaster was on, all of a sudden I'm watching the 6 o'clock news, the television. And what happened? It was the grand opening of the Seattle Temple in 1968. Lord Jagannath, Srila Prabhupada, showers of flowers. That's for me. And earlier when I was 12 years old, that was the first time I took interest in spiritual life. I was in the church choir, hallelujah, singing, praise the Lord, different mantras in the Christian song. But I did not get the higher taste. That's the ABCs. The Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, is the postgraduate study of spiritual life. So when I started reading the books, I remember on my college campus, which was near Vancouver, Canada, on the United States side, Bellingham, Washington. The devotees were out there dancing, waving the incense. You've seen maybe pictures of yellow and orange. The devotees, the grihastas were wearing yellow, and the brahmacharis and brahmacharinis were wearing orange. In those days, we actually shared our dhotis or our saris. I remember going to BALIMARDAN Prabhu's temple. He was the president at that time in 1973. When I first came to India, I stopped in New York. Can you imagine the Copans, we call that the Brahmin underwear. And the saris and the dhotis were all washed together. And then they would put all the dhotis in one basket and all the underwear in another basket. 1 minute cold showers. That's it. Sleep on the floor. And then cello in India. Prabhupada asked me, he sent out a letter to all the temples. Please send 2 devotees from each temple to India. So that's when I first met Vasu Ghosh Prabhu and Shravanananda, Ekanath, and Madhu Sevita, and Ilapati, who became Bhakti Vikas Swami. So that was in Juhu, just Prabhupada's office. That was the office for India. So we all flew into Bombay, and then TKG, Tamal Krishna Goswami, assigned us to different locations. So I was assigned to Delhi. I became Tejas Das's secretary. And then later, after the opening of the Krishna Balaram Mandir, that was of course, that's going quite ahead. But then we decided to start up after that 6 months with serving Delhi, we had to go back to the United States. Every 6 months, we had to get a new visa. BALIMARDAN Prabhu had come earlier. He was there for the Delhi Pandal Kirtans in 1971. And I didn't come till 73 to India. It's a long story about how I became, surrendered to Srila Prabhupada. But the main thing is that now all of you new devotees take this chanting seriously. Follow the principles seriously, and then you will experience that higher taste. That's what's necessary. It's like there's that old saying, you have a jar of honey. You got to take the lid off the honey jar. From the outside, people say honey. Well, what is honey? You got to stick your finger in and taste it. Then you get the understanding of what honey is. I'll let Bali speak again. We'll go back and forth like that. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu mentioned the Delhi Pandal. At the time of the Delhi Pandal, I was acting as Srila Prabhupada's secretary. And, I would assist him getting up on the stage, hand him his glasses, give him water during his lecture. And after the lecture, in Delhi, it was like full, there were like 30, 40, 50,000 people. And it was very, very exciting. And Dinanath and Achyutananda Maharaj used to lead kirtan, and the kirtan was so intense that the whole stage would rock back and forth because the devotees were jumping up and down, in ecstasy. And it was very ecstatic. One can even listen to those tapes now. If you want to get a feeling for it, they're available. But after the lecture, Srila Prabhupada, I would walk to the back where there was an area where Prabhupada could receive VIPs and darshan for devotees. So we would sit down and Prabhupada would play his tape of his lecture and listen to it like he was listening to it for the first time. Why, you might ask? He just spoke these words. Why is he listening to it again? Because he wasn't speaking. Krishna was speaking through him. So he was enjoying listening to his lecture because it was like listening to Krishna speaking. That's the purity of the pure devotee that we want to aspire to. And purity is the force, Srila Prabhupada used to say, by which our movement can expand. So it's extremely important. And those who are positions of responsibility should always try and see that the purity that Srila Prabhupada gave to us is handed down without any changes. So the person that receives it from us receives it purely and obtains the complete potency of the message of Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, and all the people, the great pure devotees in the line of disciplic succession. So, Srila Prabhupada was so intent on preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya, not only for his spiritual master, but also directly for Lord Chaitanya, because he finished his obligation to preach in the Western country was already finished when he came to India, because he had already established so many centers and thousands of devotees, whereas the previous sannyasis from the Gaudiya mouth went to London in 1933, and then they came back to India a year later without accomplishing anything. So Srila Prabhupada was the designated person that was prophesied by Thakur Bhakti Vinod. In 1896, he sent his book in English, The Life and Precepts of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to Western countries. And it just so happens that in 1896 was the year of Srila Prabhupada's birth. So everything is tied together. There's no accidents, no coincidences. So Srila Prabhupada was an expansion of Lord Nityananda, because he's delivering Lord Nityananda's mercy and Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And Lord Chaitanya in the Chaitanya Bhagavad described that he was more pleased when his devotees were glorified than when he was glorified directly. If someone offered obeisances to him and not to Lord Nityananda, he was not happy. Because Lord Nityananda was the one who was at that time actively preaching in West Bengal and bringing so many people to Krishna consciousness. So he said he was not happy, but he was happy if Lord Nityananda was glorified before even himself. So this is the position of the disciple. One must learn to satisfy the pure devotee. Don't think you will satisfy Krishna directly. First you satisfy his pure devotee, and then you will get Krishna's attention by giving all the respect to the pure devotee of Krishna, because there's no difference. The pure devotee has no desire to take service for himself, but only on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's what pleases the Supreme Personality of God. Then Krishna will want to see you if you please his pure devotee, because the pure devotee is so dear to Krishna that he's risking everything and depending completely on Krishna in order to satisfy Krishna's desire to spread this Krishna consciousness philosophy. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, no one is more dear than one who is preaching this message of Bhagavad Gita.
So in 1974, January, I was sent, after being 1 month in Bombay, all of us were sent and dispatched to different locations in India. So I was the secretary to Tejas. Tejas means Delhi, Prabhupada used to say. That's a year and a half before Gopal Krishna Maharaj came to India. So we were at a property called Anand Niketan. Anand Niketan is an area of Delhi close to the airport. And Srila Prabhupada came in February, and it was called the Vedic Cultural Center. At that time, Prabhu Yogendra, who knows who Yogendra is? Yes, Anand. Bolo. Nava Yogendra Maharaj. So he was in college or just graduated, and very quickly made spiritual advancement. Prabhupada was there at the Vedic Cultural Center, and all the big Indian people there were wearing their suits and ties, Western clothes, most of them. And Prabhupada was sitting up on a stage, and the whole room was decorated in this red velvet. Velvet is that cotton kind of plush fabric. It was actually maroon. And I remember the whole room was decorated like that, and the chairs were kind of like dining chairs with a high back. And Srila Prabhupada was up on the stage, and he was giving class. Then all of a sudden, he takes his hand like this, his finger, and he sticks it right up in his nose. And he goes like this. We're all like shocked. What is he doing? All these people are in their business suits, and the most elite people in Delhi. And he just brings out a big crusty. You could see it from 20 meters away, a big booger, as we call it in English. And then he just played with it like this on his finger, and he dropped it, right on the stage. We're like, and then he takes some water, and like washes his hand and drinks some water, and just continues without any break, without any embarrassment at all. Totally focused on what he needed to do. And then later that night, I was assigned to be Srila Prabhupada's watchdog, his guard. So like in most big bungalows, the servants' quarters are on the roof, on the terrace, right? And that's where Prabhupada stayed, in that room. And I could see through the curtains were open. It was night, and there was like a small light in the room. And I was the guy that was making sure that nobody would come up over the wall and try to get Prabhupada. I was the jokidar. And so through that glass, that window, Prabhupada was glowing. And it was like and the glow was such that it appeared to me that Prabhupada was floating on the bed, like this far. And sometimes Govinda Dasi and other older devotees said that when Prabhupada would walk, it was like he was not touching the ground. And they swear that he was not touching the ground sometimes. And when I first became serious, I told you about college Maya. So that's the secret. You have to really focus on being clean, being clear. Clear consciousness means chanting carefully and following the principles seriously. So I remember the first time I saw Srila Prabhupada, I still had my long hair and, college Maya, as many of you, I'm sure, have experienced, parties, girlfriends, etc. So in 72, when Prabhupada came to Portland, Oregon, Sridhar Swami was there, Bhaktidas was there, Kripanidhi, who's now in Mayapur, was there. Prabhupada gave a class, but I remember sleeping very little, and in the basement, we took a shower with a hose, a pipe that was coming out of that we would use to water the garden. And so that was that was so austere, cold water, from a pipe, because it's very cold there, northern United States. And then after that, I sat up very close to the Vyasa-san, but I couldn't remember or experience the Prabhupada that I experienced 1 year later. Went down to Central America, running through the jungles, performing austerities, chanting seriously. Sukadeva, short black devotee, African body, he was our temple president. Very nice kirtans. There's a an album called Every Town and Village. And Sukadev Prabhu is singing on that album, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That was his famous tune. And he was in Los Angeles, and he was the bad cop. Cop means policeman. And Dinabandhu, we all know Dinabandhu from Vrindavan. But Dinabandhu is one who gives the parikramas and talks about Vraj and been living in Vrindavan for many years. So he was the temple president, and in 73, starting in Portland. So both of them would treat me in different ways. So Sukadev said, "You have been coming here for so many years. Get out of here." I said, "What?" So then I went down to talk to my college professors, and they arranged a travel study program. I went down to Central America. That was like 2,000, 3,000 kilometers south. And that's when I got away from my friends, ran through the jungle, chanting Hare Krishna for 1 month, seriously. And I felt Krishna like I never had before. It was amazing. And by Krishna's mercy arrangement, when I got back to Los Angeles, traveling again by train north, Srila Prabhupada was there. There was no phones, no internet, and somehow Krishna arranged for me to have darshan of Srila Prabhupada again. And as he walked into that temple room, there was an aura surrounding his body, and every question that I had, he answered without raising my hand. I was too, he answered telepathically to questions. That was Prabhupada. Very magical, mystical experiences. I'm sure Bali has also had these. So then I was convinced that this is genuine process, something extremely special. And I moved into the Bhakta program, had a saffron dhoti. We were wearing, I put on a dhoti. In those days, we didn't wear white. We immediately put on saffron. And 1 month later, went back up to Seattle, where I was from, and moved into the temple. So I'll let Bali speak again. We'll talk a little bit more later.
Yes. Srila Prabhupada was an ocean of mercy. And I was started in 26 2nd Avenue, which was the first temple established in the USA, in New York City. And my mentor was Brahmananda Prabhu, great devotee, Srila Prabhupada. Because from Brahmananda, we learned how to love Srila Prabhupada. We learned what devotion means. When Srila Prabhupada said, "Go to Africa," Brahmananda went. So just shows you. When he said, "Go to Pakistan," he also went. So he would go anywhere. Whatever Srila Prabhupada said, it's like that saying, when someone asks you to jump, you say, "How high?" You don't question it. You just do it. So that's obedience to the desire of the spiritual master. Don't try to understand it. Just try to do it. When I was preaching overseas, Prabhupada sent me first to Japan with Sudama Prabhu, and then to Australia, where I went alone initially, and then was later joined by Upendra Prabhu, who was Prabhupada's personal servant, but Prabhupada told him to go and preach in Japan with me. In Australia with me. So after Australia, Prabhupada named me GBC for Southeast Asia, which is a huge area extending from Japan to Australia, and everything in between, including Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, etc. So I had to leave Australia to go and preach in other countries as well. And I chose to go to Hong Kong first, which was a very difficult area to preach in because I didn't speak Chinese. At least in Australia, I spoke English. It was okay. But what did I do when I got to Australia? How can one person make a difference? Well, we have the example of the Mahajan. Srila Prabhupada is a Mahajan. What did he do when he came to New York? He sat down in Tompkins Square Park and he chanted Hare Krishna. And then Krishna arranged everything. So in Australia, I did the same. Initially, I was in the suburb, not in Sydney, which is the largest city. So I went in Sydney where I could, be able to preach where there were so many people. And I rented a room initially. And I sat down in a small park in an area called King's Cross, and I chanted Hare Krishna. And from that, everything developed, just like developed in New York for Srila Prabhupada. Because Prabhupada empowered us to do these things. He didn't just ask us blindly, like the Gaudiya Math, go to London and then come back in a year. Prabhupada empowered us so that Lord Chaitanya's mission would be spread to every town and village. And in India, you have a great opportunity because you already know who Krishna is to some degree. In the West and in these other countries, they have no idea. So it requires a lot more, but you already have the advantage of the Vedic culture. But you just have to exercise your free will and walk through the door that Srila Prabhupada is holding open. He's actually brought the spiritual world into the material world and allowed us to enter into it. And the worship, if you go to many temples in India, some are very nice, but perhaps the majority don't have the same standard of deity worship that Srila Prabhupada has taught us. And just to see the deities in the temple is purifying one's eyes, purifying one's mind. And bowing down to them is purifying one's body. So he's made it so easy for us. But in these other countries, I was preaching in Malaysia, which is a Muslim country, and very difficult. But there are a small population of Indians, both South Indians and North Indians, who are business people. And we distributed, myself and two other devotees, distributed a tremendous amount of Srila Prabhupada's books because they were very favorable to Krishna consciousness movement. And Srila Prabhupada became so enthused because we were preaching in a country like that he decided to come to the country and preach himself because we had ignited that fire of preaching that was in his heart and which he never stopped doing. Everything that he did 24 hours a day was to push forward the mission of Lord Chaitanya and the mission that his Guru Maharaj had given to him. So Srila Prabhupada came to Malaysia from India, and he came with only one servant, Bhagavan Prabhu, and they carried Radha Krishna deities for the Sydney temple. They were about this big in marble. One of them they carried on the plane, and I think the other was was packed very carefully, so it wouldn't be damaged. And when he came to Kuala Lumpur, and he came down from the plane onto the tarmac directly. They didn't have the terminals that are connected nowadays. And then I was on the tarmac also. and he saw me, and he embraced me, which was very rare to be embraced by the pure devotee. So, and then Srila Prabhupada went on to visit the main cities in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, Ipoh, Tilak Ansan, and Penang. Those are the major cities. And we had programs in all the cities. But Srila Prabhupada had to travel by car hundreds of miles to these preaching schedule that we had set up for him. And there was no air conditioning in the car. And Malaysia is very hot, like Bombay gets in the hot season. So it was very difficult. And when we traveled in the car, he was trying to take rest, but every time he would fall asleep, his head would go back and he'd wake up. So I was thinking, what can I do to help Srila Prabhupada get some rest so he could preach the way he wanted to? So as his head came back, I decided to put my hand so his head would rest on my hand and that he could continue to rest. And when Srila Prabhupada, he opened his eyes once and he looked at me and he appreciated it. I didn't know if he would be angry or not, but I think he appreciated it. And on the way we stopped and I served him prasad because he always carried his tiffin, which had prasad in it. And we had a lunch by a little stream, and I served him and took a little Mahaprasad, and then we continued to reach our destination. But the love between the spiritual master and the disciple is very, very great. So as one serves the spiritual master, then one can get realization of that relationship. And Srila Prabhupada will give you his association, and you will feel it. You'll feel his potency. Just like when you walk into this temple, we are feeling Srila Prabhupada's potency, because the deities only enter into the deity form at the request of the pure devotee. And that's why we feel that. I was in Delhi recently in a place called Chippiwada. And that was a place that Srila Prabhupada lived from 1958 to 1965, just before he engaged in his journey to the United States of America. And those deities, when you enter the temple room, you just have a very strong presence of Krishna, because these deities were worshipped by the pure devotee for 7 years. And it's very awesome that one can experience this by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And they have his original harmonium. And this deity is now an ISKCON center, because the people who were in charge of the temple decided to donate it to ISKCON to take care of. And the deity there is very special, because it's over 170 years at that same location. So it's not something new. And Srila Prabhupada worshiping the deity makes it very special.
Hare Krishna. So there's many things we can talk about from 1973 to 1975, but I'm going to jump ahead to 76, 77 when I was in Bombay, because we're in Bombay, Mumbai now. It used to be Bombay, now it's Mumbai. So in 1976, we had our BBT library party office in the back of Hare Krishna land, which is now where the wedding hall is, and there were 6, 7 apartment buildings at that time. There was a statue of Mahatma Gandhi. There was a little garden. It was like a little housing society that Hare Krishna land was composed of. And the Juhu temple that's there now was under construction. Okay? So Srila Prabhupada had arrived. Srila Prabhupada's quarters were right next door to the BBT office in the backside of Hare Krishna land. Now, inside Srila Prabhupada's room one day, there were some American sannyasis and senior brahmacharis sitting and taking the darshan of Srila Prabhupada in his room. Approximately you could say a 2-bedroom flat. That means 2 bedrooms, a hall, like that. And Prabhupada was in what would be called the living room, or the main room as you open the door, but it was completely filled with American, white-bodied, and a very few Indian devotees. But hello, knock, knock, knock at the door, right? And who arrived? I was not in that room. I was next door, but my door was open. The office, my office, BBT office, was open. And at the front door were some very important Indian businessmen, like Sadaji Whitlaw, who was in charge of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, and some very important dignitaries, some businessmen. I can't remember exactly who they were, but you can imagine some of the founding industrialists of India from Bombay were at the door, dressed in dhoti and kurta with their Nehru cap on. And there was a brahmachari, American brahmachari, blocking their entrance. And Prabhupada became so furious. He became so angry. Why was he angry? Huh? He said, move out of the way, get back to the back of the room. You have no idea who these men are. They are pure devotees. Involved in the sannyasis, were shocked. And so these very nice Indian businessmen from Mumbai sat right up close to Srila Prabhupada, and they had a very nice, friendly conversation in Hindi. So sometimes devotees from the West, we would misbehave. And then Prabhupada said, why like this? And the devotees told Prabhupada, well, Srila Prabhupada, sometimes, we experience that, we can't get along and we don't like the Indians. Prabhupada said, well, I'm an Indian. I'm an Indian. And the Prabhupada said, what, you don't like me? And, oh no, Prabhupada, you're different. And I remember another devotee told me about this. He's now in Chandigarh, Chaitya Guru, now Bhakti Chaitanya Swami. So another time in Mumbai, I was getting trained up in life membership. How many people do life membership here? Okay, all right. So I was trained by Tamal Krishna Goswami, Sridhar Swami, and Giriraj Swami. So Sridhar told me this story. It's a true story. This took place a couple of years earlier when Yashodanandan Swami at that time and Guru Kripa Swami, this is before they were collecting the money to build Krishna Balaram Mandir. This is in Hyderabad, where BALIMARDAN was also there a little bit later. They were collecting the money to build the Hyderabad Mandir, which also opened, the grand opening, the preliminary opening was at the same time as the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan. So what happened was one week, they were making life members for the whole week and staying in a 5-star hotel in Hyderabad. True story. So now it's time to pay the bill and make the owner of the hotel a life member. Tamal, stand by the door and take your danda and go like this, you know. So TKG, we called him Tamal Krishna Goswami. So he stands by the door listening to Guru Kripa and Yashodananda. But they block the door so nobody can enter, nobody can leave. And the owner of the hotel is sitting behind the desk, right? And Guru Kripa and Yashodananda, you know, you got three choices. That's like nothing, no like, you know, Kemcho and no soft talk. Just right to the point. You got three choices. You give me your son, you shave your head, you move into the temple, or you become a life member. Tamal blocked the door. Guy's like shocked, afraid, you know, what's going on. So, silence. He thinks about it a little bit, takes out his pen, and he writes a check. And of course, there was a big bill. It was a 5-star hotel, you know. That's even more than the life membership, you know, three devotees, prasadam, room, you know, etc. So he not only becomes a life member, but he gives a donation, extra donation, and he said, and all of your room expenses are canceled. Yeah. So then I thought, after I heard that story, those guys were really fired up. You know, let me try this. You know, let me do something similar. Right? So then I was at that particular day, I was really enthusiastic. So I can't remember who my assistant was, but you know, we always had like a Hindi-speaking, English-speaking assistant, you know, with an Indian body. Prabhupada wrote me a letter. He said, when he invited me to come to India, he wrote a letter. He said, it's very nice that you have taken this idea of serving in India and your party here, you should take an Indian devotee and the combination, you know, the white skin and the brown skin, the American and Indian is very nice. You will get very good results. So we got on the train, you know, there's the same type of train. I think we had first class train pass, monthly train pass that we got. And we jumped on the train, went down to Churchgate. You know, I'm sure all of you have been to Churchgate and Victoria Terminal. And then we got out and we probably took an auto to the market where they have the cloth, where all of the Sonys and the cloth merchants and the diamond merchants are. Can't remember the name right now, but it's right down there in the heart of Bombay. And we walk into this one guy's office, right? And he was sitting behind the desk on the floor, on a gutty, with the big pillows, you know, behind him, and wearing the dhoti and kurta. And he had a big accounting book, one of those big red ledger books, and he was writing. And I walk in, I say, hey, Freddie, get your money ready. Hey, Freddie, get your money ready. But I didn't say it like, I was really, you know. And he looks up, what? And I said, you've got three choices. You give me your son, you shave your head, and you move into the temple, or you become a life member. 20 years later, on his deathbed in New Jersey, near New York, he calls me on the phone. He said, Abhinanda, before I die, I wanted to say thank you. You made me a devotee. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.
Indians have a great advantage in the Krishna consciousness movement, not for the reasons we talked about before, but because this was Prabhupada's special project directly from Lord Chaitanya, because he had already, as I said before, he completed the instructions of his Guru Maharaj to spread Krishna consciousness in the English language and in the West. But now coming back to India, Srila Prabhupada said this was my idea. Not actually his, but Lord Chaitanya. So you have Prabhupada's special mercy prosecuting Krishna consciousness in India, because this was so dear to him. In fact, when I was president in New York, we had collected over crores of rupees, but in dollars, about $150,000 for a new temple in New York City. And at the time, Srila Prabhupada was negotiating for the Juhu land. Now, anyone who knows the history of the Juhu land knows that when Srila Prabhupada was trying to go to America, he used to visit Sumati Morarji, the head of Scindia Shipping Lines, to give him passage to the USA. And when he used to come to Bombay to visit her, he walked by the land in Juhu, and he used to think to himself, this is such a nice property, it would be nice for a temple to Lord Krishna. So 50 years later, not 50, how many years later?
From what day?
From the 60s, 64.
Well, let's say 60, then it's 60.
So 10 years later, 10 years later, Krishna fulfilled his desire, but not easily, because the person that was selling the property at that time, who we were negotiating with, wanted to cheat Srila Prabhupada. And he took Prabhupada's money, but then he wanted to sign a contract with someone else. So he would get double, triple money, because the other person was paying even more than Srila Prabhupada. He had agreed to give the land for Srila Prabhupada. But in the interim of this period, this man had a heart attack and died. So Srila Prabhupada was then able to negotiate with his wife, who was also problematic, but eventually she agreed to fulfill the terms of the contract. So at that time, Srila Prabhupada didn't have the money to purchase the land. So what to do? So he had Brahmananda Prabhu, who was his secretary, call me in New York and asked to send the money that we had collected for Sankirtan, because I had informed Srila Prabhupada about it, and send it to India for the Juhu land. So Srila Prabhupada was very pleased when we were able to do that, and the purchase was actually completed. So that just goes to show you that nothing is impossible for Krishna. He wanted to satisfy the desire of his pure devotee. And pure devotee is a very special person. When I traveled with Srila Prabhupada from Malaysia to Australia, in Australia we were staying in an apartment, and I was Prabhupada's secretary, servant, everything, whatever he needed, you know. So in the middle of the night, I heard Srila Prabhupada's bell ringing, and that meant I had to go to his room. So I went into his room, and it was very dark, except for a small light where Srila Prabhupada was reading at his small table, and he had this big Bhagavatam in red-colored binding, and he was reading from the 7th canto about Prahlad Maharaj, the great Mahajan and pure devotee of the Lord. You see, Lord Nrsimha came to protect him and to glorify his pure devotee. But Srila Prabhupada was crying, and I couldn't understand why he was crying. So he motioned for me to sit down. And then he started talking about the mercy and the compassion of the pure devotee, Prahlad Maharaj, and how he didn't want to go back to Godhead alone. And this is a pure devotee. He cries at night for the conditioned souls out of his compassion to bring them back to home, back to Godhead. So this is why he has established so many temples out of his compassion. And we simply have to, agree. He's holding the door open for us, but we have to use our free will to walk through that door, to enter into that spiritual world that Srila Prabhupada has brought into this material world. Like the lotus flower exists in the water, but is not affected by the water. It floats purely, and we can experience its beauty and its beautiful smell. So Srila Prabhupada has brought the spiritual world into the material world and given us the chance to walk through that door and enter it into spiritual activities that go on in the Krishna Consciousness Society. So this should be our desire, because once one has tasted the nectar of the lotus feet of the Lord, as it says in Srimad Bhagavatam, one cannot forget it. And that will give one the motivation to continue in Krishna consciousness and advance oneself to get the full realization of the mercy of the pure devotee and spiritual master. Any questions?
Thank you so much for sharing all the experiences. My question is, in today's time, if
Where's the mic? Mic.
It's not working. He has to turn it on. Try now. Why don't you come up?
first of all, thank you so much for sharing all the experiences. It's like, we're getting major inspiration through you, Srila Prabhupada's association. So my question is, Srila Prabhupada used to use technology, even in those times. So today, when in the times of artificial intelligence and
Now it's working.
yeah. So today, the times when there are artificial intelligence and technology like this, how this do you think Prabhupada would have used it?
Yes.
Any idea how
We use everything in the service of Krishna, and then it becomes spiritualized. So all the technology, like there was a visionary in America, and his name was Marshall McLuhan, and he wrote a book in the 50s or 60s about understanding media. And he said that in the future, the world will become, he used the term, a global village because of media. Media connects all the parts of the world so that when we preach on something like YouTube, it immediately becomes available to millions of people in the farthest corners of the world. So this is how we use the technology of today to flood the world with the chanting of Hare Krishna, with the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam.
maybe a follow-up question? The patience of people have come down, their attention span has come down, lower than golden fish, they say today's time. Now, bringing them back,
Go ahead, go ahead.
bringing them back to read books, because
The books are also available online for
exactly.
free.
So now the version is going to read it on tab or on Kindle. They say, you know, you have next. So this appears a little challenging because not every book probably is there online today. So how first of all the reading capacity, I see that it has gone down. Everyone wants to listen a 5 minutes read and get everything. So that patience itself has come down. And whenever so I'm sensing the book distribution and all that would be difficult in these times. The hard book, actual books.
Well, we still do book distribution because there's something special about a book.
Like, I agree, but users don't. I mean, the people.
It's not for everyone. That's why there's free will.
Okay.
So
I've got an idea.
Yeah.
Well, I've got an idea on that point. Along with the book, right, you can provide either a CD for the car. A lot of my godbrothers, a lot of my friends, like you, we spend so much time doing what? Driving to work, right? So you have a CD or you have a flash, right? And drive, and you listen to Prabhupada's lectures, right? We all have problems reading books. We all have, but we might not read them necessarily. So we have to continue with both. Use all formats, and also films, right? Movies are being made. You can make more movies. You're an intelligent guy. You come up with an idea. Why not? How about with every book provide a pen drive with audio lectures in Hindi? What's that?
Making movie out of a book. Every book.
Yeah, make a movie out of a book. Yes, do it.
yeah, we have movies.
Do it. No, do something new. That's that, right? That's why not? You have our blessings. Yes, we have movies. That's correct.
Yeah,
But
one
we
movie
need
was
more.
just published. What's the name of it? About Prahlad Maharaj.
Mahashringa Avatar.
Mahashari and the Avatar. So we want to use all media, but we can't force everyone to become Krishna conscious, but we can give everyone the opportunity. That's what Srila Prabhupada used to write before his meeting. Please take advantage of this great opportunity. So now we can use technology to give that opportunity to almost everyone because it's on YouTube, it's everywhere. It's in the movies, it's in books, all media, not just books. But if someone becomes Krishna conscious, they'll want to read the books. Because these are Srila Prabhupada's words, which we treasure. Mataji, did you have a question?
Thank you so much. This is actually the first most time that you experience what you experienced. Thank you very much. My question is on initiation and realization. When do you actually feel or that moment, and is it even expressible in words? And if you can share some thoughts on realization or initiation, how did it happen with you?
Well, I felt that the experience when I first met the devotees at my college, and I stayed up all night reading a Back to Godhead magazine. I felt that was an initiation. Because I remember crying with my tears coming out of my eyes. And the next initiation, of course, would have been when I got the formal initiation from Srila Prabhupada, and then a second initiation. But when I actually met Srila Prabhupada personally for the first time, it's a long story, but that brought tears to my eyes as well. That was an overwhelming experience.
Does that answer your question?
I mean, there's a lot of more that could be. It's a long answer. But what can you say?
Oh, Prabhu?
We have a more.
Prabhuji, just now you mentioned that your first experience with the Srila Prabhupada is long story. You can give some anecdote, some points on that maybe.
Well, it depends on how much time do we have. Do something nice for Krishna and Krishna will want to see you. So I was, see, by the time, see, Bali Prabhu joined a few years before me, right? 69 or 68. And I didn't take initiation, I didn't become serious till 73. So by that time, it was very clear that Srila Prabhupada did not want to be disturbed because he was busy doing what? What was he busy doing? Right, writing, translating Sanskrit into English, publishing the Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. And there we got this, we were getting these letters every week from what was Satsvarup Das Goswami's BBT library party in America. So myself and Bahushra Das in 1974, early 75, we flew from India to San Francisco, California, Berkeley, and got trained up with the idea that we're going to do this in India. And when we got back to India, after getting trained properly in the art of selling books to the libraries, the universities, the colleges, we didn't have a vehicle. We only could go by bus. So I wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada, and he said, yes, it's a very good idea that the Seattle Temple purchase, finance, and maintain a van for you to use so you can visit the libraries all over, at that time, Maharashtra. And guess what? In those days, there was no Gmail, there was no mobiles. Prabhupada did not like telephones. You probably heard the story how once the devotees put a phone in Srila Prabhupada's room in Vrindavan, and ring, ring at midnight, he would be disturbed. Get this phone out of my room. He didn't, that disrupted him. So there was only by letter. And that took 1-2 weeks to reach and 1-2 weeks to return. So we told Srila Prabhupada to reply to our letter in Seattle. And guess what? When we got to Seattle, either the temple president or somebody had hid that response because we knew that Srila Prabhupada would approve of this idea that the Seattle temple should finance. Hello, the letter was missing. And so we were like crying, And guess what? 20 years later, the Bhaktivedanta Archives gives us that letter. And we were right. Prabhupada approved of the idea. But anyways, we didn't have that letter, so we called up Jayatirtha, who was a GBC in Los Angeles. That's just directly south of Seattle, on the west coast, California. So Jayatirtha says, well, speak to Rameshwar. So Rameshwar, Robert Grant, was in charge of both the book publishing and the BBT, and he knew about Gargamuni. Brahmananda's brother, Gargamuni, had been in America for the past 6 or 8 months collecting money for the Mayapur Chandradoya worldwide traveling Sankirtan party. The Gargamuni was the temple president in Calcutta, but he had flown to the United States to collect money for Mayapur, right? And that's way back, 1975. Gargamuni had several vans, and he was traveling all over the United States getting the bucks, getting the Lakshmi, right? So we flew, and so all of a sudden, okay, so how does that, I think Gargamuni might have something for you. We said, okay, come on down. We went out and collected money with a can in front of a grocery store, begging for our airplane ticket. And we bought that ticket. We flew down to Los Angeles. The airport is only about 15 minutes away from the temple, Rukmini Dwarkadis, right now, same temple, 3764 Watsika Avenue. For some reason, like magic, as we're walking out of the taxi towards the darshan of Rukmini Dwarkadis, a big white van, a minibus, small tempo traveler, whatever you want to, pulls up right in front of us, rolls down the window. It's Gargamuni Swami. We go, wow. Hey, I heard about you guys. You got a passport? Yes. You know how to drive? Yes. Well, we are flying next week to Frankfurt, Germany. Karandar is already there. He's going to buy 6 Mercedes vans, and one of them is for you. I said, what? Okay. Next week, we're in Frankfurt, Germany, dancing with Hansa and the Dudas, Bhakti Bhai Baba Swami, Sachinanda Swami, all brahmacharis then, of course. We're all brahmacharis, a few sannyasis. And then we drive 6, I'm one of the drivers, Mahushra, my sidekick. He's in the back, jumping up and down when we go over a river that's flooded, so that we don't slide into the river. It's in the middle of winter. We go through the Bulgaria, Turkish Alps. There's a semi across the road, blocking the road. There's 10 meters of snow on each side of the highway, and the lorry is sideways. We get out in our dhotis, we shovel the snow so we can drive around, right? So then we get to it's a long story. We could write a whole book about it. But we get to Mayapur. Gargamuni has purchased new Vrindavan ghee and sour cream on dry ice. What is dry ice? Like you go to the rock festivals and the smoke is coming up. It's minus, super cold. What's dry ice? Super cold, so we kept the sour cream on dry ice. All the way to Mayapur. Prabhupada enjoys puris and sabji from a Mewari Brahmin cook, Shantila, who cooks the most incredible prasadam for Prabhupada out of one of the vans. One van is designated as a cooking van. One van is for life membership, Gargamuni and Sridhar Swami and Subhag Swami. And one van is for Harinam Sankirtan. One van is for book distribution on the streets. One is a Pandal program for setting up the tents. But like that, we traveled from Mayapur to Nainital via Banaras, Varanasi, and Allahabad. But Prabhupada didn't want to hear about these other programs. He was only interested in the library party, what we were doing. Myself and we were like, what? Because in those days, it was life membership. That was all anybody wanted. That was the main thing. You got to be a life membership man, and that was because that was the way we would collect money to maintain the temples. But Prabhupada didn't want to hear about that. So by the time we got to Vrindavan, which was a few months later, there had been many letters between Gargamuni and Prabhupada, and he converted all 6 vehicles to library party vehicles. So I had never met Prabhupada. He was so happy with this idea that I pushed through. You can't imagine how difficult it was to get this idea through. And there were many fights and quarrels with the GBC at that time. Don't want to name any names, but we got it through. It happened. And it was Prabhupada's program. You go to the National Library in Delhi, 1963, Bhagavatam set, first volume, Canto 1, Prabhupada's signature. You know, that was his program, before he came to America. So one day, after a few months from the story I just told you, I'm in Vrindavan, and I'm up by the Samadhi near the near the gate. Where there's no Samadhi there because Srila Prabhupada's in his house. And Paramahansa Krishnadas Babaji, Prabhupada's godbrother, wore just a very short dhoti, walks in out of the corner of my eye. I'm doing the Hare Krishna like this, Hare Krishna, chanting, doing turning around in a circle. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, he comes up in the air like this, and disappears. Walks into Prabhupada's house like that. And he would go into the Jamuna, and he would come up in the Ganga in Mayapur. That was Krishnadas Babaji. Guru Das confirmed this to me. Anyways, a few minutes later, he comes out of Prabhupada's house. I can see him leaving the house, and immediately Gopal Krishna, most of your devotee Prabhu's your spiritual master, comes running up to me like out of breath, At that time he was, still grihastha, wearing white. Abhi, Prabhupada wants to meet you. Would you, he asked me a question, would you like to meet him? And I'm saying, no, Gopal. And of course, anyways. So then I follow Gopal Krishna Maharaj back to Srila Prabhupada's room. And I'm all by myself. So first of all, I enter Prabhupada's house, and Prabhupada's secretary at that time was Paramahansa Swami. And he was very humble and very sweet sannyasi. And he said, yes, you just go in. And I was thinking, oh, there's going to be, be other devotees in there in Prabhupada's room. But I was the only one. And Prabhupada was sitting behind the desk. How many people have been to Prabhupada's room in Vrindavan? Okay. And you can see him, Srila Prabhupada, sitting behind that marble desk with those black framed glasses, translating Srimad Bhagavatam, right? It's just like that. And the glasses fall down like this over his nose, and he motions to me like this. Come, because I'm like afraid, And then I come a little bit closer. I'm about 3 meters away, and no, come on, and come a little closer, like this. Come a little closer. So now I'm right in front of his desk, and I'm afraid. I'm a little boy. I'm just 24, 25 years age, and then he says, "Stand up." It didn't say anything, so then I get up. It brings me right over. Like I'm this close, I'm standing over Srila Prabhupada's face. I'm this close to Prabhupada's face. Prabhupada is sitting down and I'm standing right here. Like my head is right here. And he puts his glasses down again and he says, "Thank you very much. Is there anything that I can do for you?" My God, I couldn't control my tears. It just bursted out, tears, crying. And I couldn't say anything. I kept Prabhupada in a broken, stuttering and broken. "Prabhupada, you have done everything for me. There is nothing that you can do for me. You've already done everything." And so then he wanted to talk to me, I'd never met Prabhupada. I would never bothered him except in writing. So he said, "Okay, sit down." He tried to gain your composure, like that was what he was signaling to me. But I could not gain my composure. I just continued to cry like a baby. But what can I do? It was like I couldn't control it. So then he went like this. He said, "Okay, you can go." He didn't say anything, but just so thereafter, I just communicated with Srila Prabhupada by letter. Bali has so many letters. I got 5 letters, all regarding the library party. And he said that if I do this program, that Krishna will bless me with his mercy. So my idea now is I came back to India, same with Bali. We are going to spend most of our time, maybe 80% of our time every year, maybe go back in the hot weather to Europe or some other country, but we're going to be here now in India. We want to die here, So that's what Prabhupada wanted us to do, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm back in Gujarat. BALIMARDAN Prabhu is traveling, trying to see where he will be most comfortable. Or maybe he will just continue to travel all over Maharashtra and Gujarat, hopefully. And I'm going back to Ahmedabad. This is where I was served as a temple president from 78 to 83, and Vasu Ghosh has arranged for me to be there again. So I want to put that, like Bhima Prabhu recently a year or two ago, got the Marathi Srimad Bhagavatam approved by the government of Maharashtra. So let's get that Gujarati one approved in Gandhinagar, right? So that's the next thing I'm going to try to get done, and put the Gujarati Bhagavatam sets in the libraries. So we did the English, so let's do the Gujarati. All right, Kamcho, Aujo.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Time for Prashad.
राम राम तो हम सबको बहुत ही सुंदर प्रभुपाद जी के जीवन और प्रभुपाद जी के पिता और प्रभुपाद जी के शुद्ध भक्तों का संग का प्राप्त हुआ, और पता लगा कि 50 साल पहले किस तरह से वे सब प्रभुपाद जी की सेवा में लगे थे और कितना समर्पण और कितना प्यारा और कितना प्रेम प्रभुपाद जी का को हमने देखा। तो इनका आभार प्रकट करते हुए एक बार हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र उच्चारण करते हैं। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
Jai Hari Bol.
बलिमर्दन प्रभु जी, अभिनंदन प्रभु जी, शिल प्रभुपाद जी, बिहारी गौर हरि प्रेमानंद।
Great.
Oh, somebody can take a picture of it. Put it on Facebook. Who's got a good camera? Who has a good phone? You do, probably. Get you in there too. All right. That was a good picture. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Now you have to share the photo with me. Somebody. Who's got a good camera? Which one? Who? Who has the good camera? You?
I will send
Yeah, with Prabhupada. Okay, that's a good idea. Okay. So you had a good camera? Yeah. Your phone is good? What's that? You got it. Okay. Sometimes you go to the phone. I'll give you my WhatsApp. Well, we're going to go down to Google. We might be either going to Govardhan Eco Village today or tomorrow morning. 8th, 9th, and 10th, June 8th, 9th, and 10th. And we might be coming back to the hospital. And then we're going to go by in that period, 8th, 9th, and 10th. And then after that, I'm going to go back to Govardhan. My daughter Panchgani Mahabaleshwar. Namaste, huh? What's your name? You guys like Chai Jagannath? Laura, okay, I see that, right? Laura Jagannath. I didn't find her. Yeah, that's in our room. Shall I find Krishna that way? No problem. Where are you staying here? Nearby? Any questions? I can't promise. No. We will want to go to Govardhan Eco Village as soon as possible. No, today. Otherwise, I told him 1:30. We don't know if we're staying here overnight. Then it might be possible. You take my phone number. because it's a WhatsApp number, so it doesn't matter. +1. American +1. 858 729 4070. That's right. So then if you close it, then you can check it out. So the sleeve is